this guy's going to answer the question, how do we know God exists? Real short and sweet.
Let me answer this question. How do we know God exists? Real short and sweet.
Or sorry, real short and sweet. You're 4 seconds in. You could just restart. But maybe it's an artistic decision.
We don't.
You don't... Wait, what? You don't know God exists. Okay, that is short and sweet. Thank you for your time. I guess I'll be on my...
There's no way we can prove that God exists.
Okay, but we're not talking about whether you can prove that God exists. We're talking about whether you know God exists. That is, you have a belief that God exists, and it's justified in some way, through some sort of argument or experience or whatever. In other words, you didn't just, spin a roulette wheel and throw a dart at it and go, yeah, that one. I'm gonna go with, yeah, God exists. That's what I believe now, totally at random, for no reason. Okay, so you have a justified belief, and your belief is true. If you have that stuff, you have knowledge. Okay, nothing to do with proving it to other people, nothing to do with proving it at all, just you believe it for a reason, and it's true. So you would think that you at least believe that you know that God exists. I believe you don't know it because I believe God doesn't exist. But you would think that from your perspective, saying, I know that God exists would be completely valid. Otherwise, you're essentially saying that you don't believe it, or you believe it for no reason at all, or it's not true.
And that's because when most people think in terms of proof, they think in terms of rational reasoning, which says that nothing can be believed unless there is unmistakable logical and empirical evidence that is so strong no logical thinking person could ever miss it.
Okay, again, for some reason we're talking about proof now, 15 seconds into the video, when proof is not the topic. Knowledge is the topic. How do you know? Now, sure, being of the opinion that your belief is justified on the basis of airtight, logical, and empirical arguments and evidence would qualify your belief as justified, but that's not the only kind of justification that you can have for your beliefs. You can have essentially whatever kind of justification you want. The point is, you didn't just pick it out of a hat. Or hell, maybe you did pick it out of a hat, but you think God delivers the right answer into the hat, and you pick that answer out of the hat, and you go, yes, God has told me the answer. You know, if that kind of thing actually somehow gets results for you, it's a justification. Of course, I'm pretty sure it's not doing that for you, but that's really beside the point.
And we cannot prove God that way.
You can't prove God through logic or empirical evidence? I appreciate you saying that. It would save me a hell of a lot of time if people just gave up and said, yeah, all that logical argument stuff and all that creation evidence stuff, it's all garbage. We really got nothing. Sorry. We'll just go home now.
But the truth is that we can't prove there is no God that way either.
Well, you can argue for the non-existence of God logically. Whether those arguments work or not is up for debate, but you can definitely justify a belief in the non-existence of God using logical arguments. I guess my real question here is, what exactly do you mean by prove? You seem to be treating this idea of proof as a very solid and undeniable sort of thing, and you seem to be treating knowledge as related to it. So what are we talking about here? Are we talking about demonstrating something's existence or non-existence through logic and evidence to the degree of absolute certainty? Are we talking about knowledge with absolute certainty? Because that's a very different thing than just knowing something. Knowing something and being absolutely certain of something aren't even in the same category, really. When you talk about knowledge, you're talking about how well your beliefs accord with reality. And when you talk about absolute certainty, you're talking about how confident you feel in your beliefs. These are different questions.
You can't prove luck or coincidence or chance. You can't prove it through rational reasoning.
Well, you can demonstrate that something is most likely luck or chance or coincidence. To start with luck and chance, let's say that you do 10,000 coin flips. If the outcome is a matter of chance, you're going to expect that to tend towards a 50-50 outcome. Half heads, half tails. But if it's luck, if someone is exceptionally lucky in some sort of way that's not understood, you're going to expect that ratio to be different. You're going to expect it to be, 60% heads and 40% tails. If some guy says, I'm very lucky at dice, and then he comes and uses your verified fair dice to predict his rolls over many trials at a rate much better than 1 in 6, you're going to go, okay, that guy is actually really lucky. I don't know what's behind this luck phenomenon, but it does seem like it's a thing. As for coincidence, I guess you would say that that's when the guy predicts his rolls really well for 4 rolls in a row, and then it falls off, and then, after 500 more rolls, he gets a good streak again, and then it falls off again. Then you would say, yeah, that seems like just coincidence. It lacks the consistency of the luck scenario, and over enough attempts, it tends towards the rate predicted by chance. Now, again, I think the word prove is where we're getting hung up here. You can't prove it's luck or coincidence or chance. Okay, well, I'm not interested in proving something. I'm interested in believing the most reasonable thing based on the evidence. And if I'm right, and the reason that your coin flips tend towards 50% heads and 50% tails is chance, then I know that it's chance.
It takes faith to believe there is no God. It takes faith to believe there is God.
Well, it seems to me that when people say faith, what they're talking about is essentially belief without evidence, belief without justification. And if you believe something with no justification and it turns out that you're right, you were only right by chance. You just accidentally ended up right. You could just as easily have been wrong for the exact same reason, or lack thereof. That's not knowledge. So if you believe what you believe based on faith, I don't think you know shit. Now, if you say you believe based on faith, but in fact you believe based on some kind of evidence, in which I'll include things like personal experience, well then at least you have some kind of a justification. But saying I believe based on faith is saying I believe with no justification at all.
In fact, there are very few things that can be proven with rational reasoning.
I would say it's more that there are very few domains in which you can prove things with rational reasoning. Math, logic, systems in which certain conclusions must follow from certain premises no matter what, by definition. That doesn't really apply when you're trying to find things out about the real world. Things are a little bit squishier out here. Not meaning that what's true is squishy, but meaning that determining what's true is squishy. One thing can't be taken to imply another with quite the same oomph. You know, math and logic are systems people designed to work based on very rigid, defined, hard and fast rules, and reality isn't really like that. If you look at a coin coming up heads or tails roughly 50% of the time each, you can draw conclusions about why that might be with some degree of confidence, but it doesn't require you 100% to draw some particular conclusion from it. If you're trying to figure out why it's coming up that way, there's always some other possibility for why it's coming up that way. It's not the same as abstractly saying, if P then Q, P therefore Q. That statement is necessarily true by the very nature of the, essentially, language that you're speaking in. But saying the reason the coin flips are tending towards 50% is that it's chance isn't. And that's why this idea that you should be believing things about the real world with absolute certainty is so absurd.
That's why there's so many opinions on everything from politics to the best pickup truck, because things cannot be proved unmistakably when you're looking for evidence of that sort.
Well, let's face it, even if they could be proved unmistakably, people would still believe different things. If it could be unmistakably proven, people can still be wrong. But yeah, I agree. That's basically what I was saying, is that to expect that kind of certainty is absurd because it's just not something that applies to reality. But the options aren't absolute certainty, absolute perfection in your proof of something, or faith. You're presenting a false dichotomy. You can believe things, and you can have justifications, and you can have good justifications, and you can have unimpeachably amazing justifications, and you still won't have absolute certainty. But that doesn't mean you have no reason to believe it, and you're just believing it based on faith. You're talking into a camera that I'm pretty sure you think is there, and you don't believe it's there based on faith. You believe it's there because you have evidence of it being there. There's no faith involved. Yeah, you could be wrong. That doesn't make it unreasonable to believe that it's there, and it doesn't make it a faith position. It makes it a reasonable reaction to a reasonable level of confidence you've achieved through reasonable evidence.
It's key to understand that the Bible never tries to prove the existence of God.
I don't know if that's true or not off the top of my head, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, the Bible's not exactly written for the unbeliever, is it?
I mean, isn't that interesting?
Not really. People who believe in God wrote a bunch of stuff about what they believe about God, instead of arguing that God exists for some unbelieving possible audience. It doesn't seem interesting at all.
Very first verse of the Bible says, in the beginning, God created. God was there.
Yeah, stories about God start with God not existing. Whoa.
And because God is a creator, he knows that he put a Godship in the mind of every single person.
Are we done talking about how the Bible just says God exists without providing evidence for it? Because this is a different topic now, and I don't see how it's related.
And that deep in their knower, they know God exists. So he never tries to prove that. And you know what? I assume that. I take God at his word. So every person I'm talking to, I assume they really know deep down that God exists, no matter what they're saying.
Know or believe? You assume that everyone you're talking to believes God exists, right? Not that they know it, because you're talking about people believing in God for no justification whatsoever. I wouldn't say that counts as knowledge that he exists. I do appreciate the honesty, though. Throughout this video so far, I've appreciated the honesty. I mean, you're basically just outright saying you got absolutely nothing, you have no reason to believe in God, but you just do anyway, and you insist that everyone else does too, because you just feel like it. And that's refreshing, because I'm pretty sure that's a lot more common than people want to let on. Oh, one more thing. Deep in their knower is a weird statement, but I kind of like it. It has basically no meaningful application, but it sounds funny, and I like that.
I just assume that they know he exists. And I engage in the conversation because I want to be able to get to the gospel.
Why are you talking to me about your mom being in the hospital and your wife being pregnant and your kids' problems in school? When are we going to get to the gospel? It's the only reason I'm talking to you.
And I just want to challenge you to do the same thing.
To assume things about other people that I have no way of knowing just because I feel like it? No.
Everybody really knows that God does exist.
You know, the funny thing is, on the topic of belief with certainty, that's damn close to being one of the things that I would allow as something you could reasonably believe with certainty. Like, one thing to me that seems reasonable to be certain about is if I'm experiencing something, then there is something that is an experiencer. Whatever that is, whatever that actually looks like, there's something. And the things that I believe are among the experiences that I'm experiencing. It's one of the thoughts that might be referred to in the statement, I think, therefore I am. And my point with this is to express to you how funny it is to me that you say with total confidence, you believe what I believe, despite you having zero insight into this and me having complete insight into this. I believe to almost the highest degree of confidence possible, and I know that you're wrong when you say this. There's nothing else you could say that I could be more confident that you're wrong about other than something like, you don't exist. Now, I'm sure that pretending to be the big omniscient guy, the god who knows the interior mental states of all the other people around you, is real impressive to your fucking idiot followers, but to me it's hilarious.
There are really only two worldviews, and they're mutually exclusive.
Theism and atheism. I wouldn't call either of those worldviews. They're positions on one question, and they don't really tell you anything about a person's ideas about how the world should be and is. Whether there's a god or not is an aspect of someone's worldview, but a worldview is much broader than just that. I would say Christianity is a worldview, or a set of worldviews, but just theism with no further detail, it's not a worldview. How is that a worldview? It's just one opinion.
One is called theism, which is God, and one is called atheism, which is no God.
In the sense of there is a God you believe in or there's no God you believe in, yes.
Now, theism says that there is a loving God who has supernatural intelligence. He gives meaning and purpose to the universe. He created every single person with meaning and purpose, and they have an eternal destiny.
No, theism doesn't say that. Theism says there's a God. All these features you're applying to the God, that's your religion. That's not theism just in general. It's a type of theism, one of many, but let's not define a category by a specific one of its subcategories. That's not useful. You really have to learn to make finer-grained distinctions. It's important when you're having conversations like this.
Atheism says that we live in a godless existence.
A lot of people who call themselves atheists who are watching this video probably don't say that. There's a lot of the weak atheists or negative atheists or implicit atheists or soft atheists or whatever term you want to use out there. But I'll say that we live in a godless universe, so whatever.
Just a life of chance and whatever nature kind of deals out to us. Our existence has no meaning except what we can carve out for ourselves, and eventually we'll return to nothingness.
I guess I could quibble with a bit of the language there, and I could probably clarify a couple things about purpose and chance and so on, but I don't think I will. I think there are just two things I'll say. Number one, no, atheism is not that. Atheism is the lack of belief in a god, and the actual idea about how the world works, why events happen, what your purpose is, what happens after you die. These are all fillable with any answer you want, other than one based in a god, because obviously that would make you not an atheist by definition. You can even be a theist and believe all of these things. You can believe that God is there and he's doing stuff in the universe, but he just is letting nature run its course here on Earth, and when things happen to you, that's just natural. You can believe that what God does not involve assigning you a purpose. You can believe that after you die, you don't exist anymore, because God didn't make it work that way. None of this is exclusive to atheism, nor does it define atheism. And that leads me to my second point, which is, if you do believe these things, as an atheist or as a theist, boo-hoo, oh no. Okay, that's enough crying about it. Let's start dealing with it. Yeah, bad stuff happens, with or without God there. Things aren't always how you want them to be, with or without God there. What life means for you is still something you're going to have to decide for yourself, with or without God there. Your religion doesn't make all the bad stuff disappear. Your religion is just a way to try to explain it away, and to try to abdicate your responsibility to manage your own life and your own mind, and to try to quell your fear of death. And whether you succeed at any of that or not, the world didn't change. It's still what it is. You're still going to have to deal with it, even if you close your eyes and plug your ears and pretend it's not happening.
Now, since neither of these can be proven, they are really two theories.
Of course you have no idea what the word theory means.
Two theories.
I thought they were supposed to be faith positions. Now they're theories. You're all over the place. One might almost think that you don't even know what the hell you're saying, and you're just sort of tossing words out at random. What these positions are just changes randomly throughout the day. Although one of them is not even supposed to be a position at all, at least not one that anyone actually takes, because everyone is a theist. So nobody's an atheist, by faith or by proof or whatever you want to say it is. So since apparently the only theory that anyone holds to is theism, because everyone believes in God apparently, why are we talking about atheism like it's a thing? There's nobody out there who disagrees with you apparently.
And in order to test a theory, what do?
Attempt to find disconfirming evidence. Or wait, no, what's the definition of theory again? The dumb one he just gave, I mean. An idea that can't be proven. Okay, so try to find a proof that the claim is unprovable?
Well, you collect data and then you ask this question.
Why my brain no work good?
Which theory best explains our observations and our experiences?
Wait, that's not that bad. Yeah, a theory is an explanation for scientific observations. So why before did you say they can't be proven, therefore they're theories? That's not what makes something a theory. This is what makes something a theory, being an explanation for the stuff that you're observing. If you knew the right answer, why did you say the wrong one?
Which one best explains it?
Which one of which? Wait. Atheism or theism? Atheism and theism are not theories. Theism comes closer to being one, considering that it actually posits an explanation, with essentially no detail. It's just, there's some kind of God who probably did something. That's as far as just bald, unadorned theism goes. Atheism, though? Atheism doesn't even enter that arena. Atheism is just, I don't think it's that. That's like someone saying, I've developed a theory for why objects fall to the ground. I don't think it's angels pulling them down. Okay, but that's not a theory. What do you think it is? It's just not that, that's all. It's not that. Like, your little sign there indicates that you might know what the word theory refers to. But considering that atheism is in no way an attempt to explain anything, you should be perfectly aware that that makes it not a theory.
If you believe in God, if there is God, you'd expect order. You'd expect intelligent design. You would expect morality. You would expect beauty. You would expect something to come out of nothing, because after all, God could do that.
I would expect literally none of those things. Not a single one. You're just taking how you think the universe is and going, well, if that's how it is, then any God would do it that way. No, you could have a God who doesn't bother ordering anything. You could have a God who leaves the universe to its own devices and engages in no intelligent design whatsoever. You could have a God who has no interest in morality, and in fact, objective morality is just a meaningless concept to it. You could have a God that makes beings with no opinions about what's beautiful or nothing that appeals to those opinions. And something coming out of absolute nothingness could be the absolute impossibility that it kind of seems plausible that it might be. And so this God did not create something out of nothing. This is a God you can make up. It's a theistic God. Believing in this God would make you a theist. And this is why theism is also not a theory. There's no explanation there. There's not even an attempt at one. Not just in the statement, there's a God. It doesn't become anything like even an attempt at an explanation until you actually add some features to the God that you're claiming, which is where religions come in. They start to provide some kind of definition to the God so that people can say, if my God exists, and it's like this, then I would expect so-and-so and so-and-so. At least that brings it into the realm of being some sort of attempt at an explanation. Theory is still very much too strong of a word, in my opinion, especially because the whole thing amounts to a shrug. Why is the universe like this? Why do I find things beautiful? Why are some things orderly in structure? I don't know, some guy wanted it that way. I don't think I'll dignify that with a word like theory. That's not how theories are developed. It's more of an uneducated guess at best. But at least it's more than just, there's a thing, full stop. At least now it's like, there's a thing and the thing is like this.
If there is no God, you'd expect disorder. You'd expect chaos.
No, not unless you have some reason to. Some deeper knowledge about the nature of reality that indicates that that's the way it would have to work. That, for example, physics and chemistry would not be able to function without a God. But actually, wait, as for what you would expect, you wouldn't expect that at all. You would expect there to be nothing, wouldn't you? Or do you think that something coming from nothing only has to happen if there's a God, and otherwise it doesn't have to happen? Because that would actually be an interesting take. I haven't heard that much. Most of the time it's like, if there's a God or if there's not a God, something still had to come from nothing, so how'd it happen without a God? But you actually specified that something coming from nothing is something you would expect to see if there were a God. So maybe you don't think that would have to happen if there were no God. Now that I say that, though, it's kind of interesting that you say we would expect to see something coming from nothing if there's a God, considering that we never see something coming from nothing. Shouldn't not seeing something you expect to see disconfirm the God? Or do you just mean before the universe?
You would expect no morality, and you would expect survival of the fittest.
But humans with morality are the fittest for the human niche. That's why we succeed. I'd wager we probably wouldn't have got as far as we did if we were all just cooking and eating each other all the time. But so, you don't think the fittest are the ones that survive. The fittest for survival, the organisms that are most able to survive, as defined by the fact that they survive, aren't the ones that survive? You think you're not seeing the survivors surviving in the world around you? What an odd and paradoxical world you must be living in.
So as you collect the data, what do we see?
That you have no clue what half of the words you're using mean.
We see order.
We see order in the universe. We see order in astronomy. We see order in the ecosystem. We see order in the laws of physics and in the laws of science. We see order in the human body.
I'm more interested in what we see in this video. Like, for example, false dichotomies between two ridiculous positions. I mean, that's what this is right now. You're like, if there's order, then God did it, and if there's not, then not God did it. And there's order, and therefore God did it. I bet you think you're real clever, really getting one over on all those dumbasses watching you. Or you're just one of them and you don't understand what you're doing.
We see a humanity that has a morality of kindness, a morality of generosity, with the ability to love. We see beauty. We see something coming out of nothing.
All right, those first two I think I've already addressed sufficiently with the false dichotomy thing. Something coming out of nothing, though. No, we don't see that. What are you talking about? When have you seen that? I'm fascinated to find out what the answer is.
Which has always been a problem for those people that are trying to, whether it's the Big Bang or whatever it is, they can't explain that.
The Big Bang is not an explanation for why we see something coming out of nothing. If what you mean is that the Big Bang is something coming out of nothing, again, I think you've really misunderstood the concept.
This explains it perfectly.
The perfect explanation for why we see something coming out of nothing. God did it. Oh good, thank you. I'm glad we have this pitiful husk of an explanation for this non-phenomenon. This was really important.
So actually the existence of God, the theory of the existence of God, explains our experiences and observations better than anything else.
Okay, man, you have fun with that. I'm curious, though, why you're trying to convince me of this. Nobody needs you to say this, right? We're all theists already, right? We all believe you already, right? So who is this for? What's the point? The very fact that you're saying any of this is an acknowledgement that there's somebody who you think might not already be convinced. And so based on the fact that you're arguing for God's existence, I think you were outright lying before about knowing everyone else's interior mental states and that everyone else in the world believes in God already, and I think you know it. Pretty scummy. Fortunately, it's such a dumbass lie that nobody with half a brain would believe it.
Now, I want you to notice that I didn't go into the theory of evolution. I didn't go into the Big Bang Theory. I didn't go into the age of the Earth.
Well, we kind of did. We found out that you think that evolution means that social animals shouldn't have moral behavior towards one another. You think survival of the fittest somehow excludes morality. You think the Big Bang is an explanation for why we see something coming out of nothing. I'm glad you didn't go into it much deeper, because that was already more than enough for me for one day.
Even though those are great discussions, maybe for a later time, and you can go into our bigger portions sections of this website.
Sections of what website? YouTube?
But our desire here at Therefore Project is to move into the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's honestly probably for the best. Just start rambling about my Bible, because you trying to talk about the Big Bang and evolution really does not seem like a good idea.
So I would stop short.
He stopped short? That's my move.
I wouldn't give them the anatomy of the human eye, which is incredible. I would probably say something like this. Well, you know, if we really want to know about God, probably the best explanation comes from the life of Jesus.
The best explanation for what? God? You want to explain why God exists by appealing to Jesus. And you're doing this instead of giving them the anatomy of the human eye, implying that these two things have some relevance to the same question. What are we talking about? I can't be the only one who's starting to get a bit confused here.
In fact, if you've got a few minutes,
I don't. Can we wrap this up?
I'd love to tell you just exactly how Jesus demonstrated who God is and his love for humanity.
Oh, that's what you want us to learn about God from it. We were talking about stuff existing this whole video. I thought you were talking about God's existence. You want to know about God's existence? Let me tell you about Jesus. But no, apparently it's just let me tell you about Jesus so you can see that my God's a nice God. Okay, so what does that have to do with not giving us the anatomy of the human eye? What's the connection?
Remember, it's the gospel of God that is the power of God to salvation. That's what we want to do.
So why did you do everything but that in this video? I don't see how rambling about how nice Jesus is for 4 minutes would have made this any less effective.
So use this question to create a little bit of, oh, wow, I never thought about that, and then move to the gospel that can change a life forever.
Wait a second, now I understand what you meant about not giving us the anatomy of the human eye. You weren't talking about not conceding to us the anatomy of the human eye. That's what I thought you meant. No, you meant you won't tell us about it. You mean you don't get into any details about the Big Bang or evolution or something. You just go like, hey, what about that evolution stuff, huh? Then you stop short, which is weird. And then you go, so anyway, how about the gospel stuff, huh? And then that's the correct way to do apologetics. Just scattershot, half-baked nonsense. Again, I don't really understand why you're bringing up the Big Bang or the evolution stuff at all, considering that supposedly everyone's already a theist. But okay. It seems like if that's the case, just skipping that part and skipping the stopping short would probably be more effective. Just ramble about Jesus and be done with it. Kind of avoids wasting a lot of people's time too. But you do you, it's your thing. Have fun with it. And thank you everyone for watching. If you would, before you go, please do give the video a like and click subscribe if you haven't. And if you really like the channel, maybe consider supporting. A couple bucks per video or per month helps a huge amount, and huge thanks to all of my supporters who've already made that choice. Early access email list, list.logicked.com, and I'll see you next time.